All right. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farrell Thomas. I am the Director of Workforce Strategies here at Tennessee Hospital Association. We are very, very happy to have you join us today to listen to some great retention and training strategies, research in our assistive personnel roles, such as a CNA and patient care technician. This is one of 6 webinars that we'll be doing around workforce and workforce strategies here at Tennessee Hospital Association. And we will get started in just a few moments. You all have been muted when you've come into the meeting, and so you will be able to enter in questions into the chat as we're progressing through our information today. And then we will address all questions after both of our presenters are completed, both of our topics have been completed. And then we will have an open dialogue with any questions that you all may have. And so once our content has been presented, again, we will go through how to ask questions verbally, but you can always put questions into the chat. Our materials will be available after the call today, and I will go over that in just a moment. All right. So again, welcome to our THA Workforce Strategies webinar series. We are extremely grateful for our presenters and our content experts today. Very happy to have everyone on the call from across the state. And again, THA is providing a series of workforce webinar strategies and different topics on recruitment and programs and featuring many, many employers as well as content experts. And so with that, I wanted to share our schedule. We do have a website dedicated to our webinar series. That website holds all of the recordings from our previous sessions, as well as the materials from our presenters and content experts. You can scan the QR code on your screen if you're not familiar with that website. And today's webinar will be recorded. We'll send out a direct link with all of the materials to the website that our presenters have provided, as well as the recording, so you can share that or reference it as needed. Our future webinars, we're really excited on May 15th to feature the development of future healthcare workers. Program with Sonova Cleveland and Blount Memorial have done some exceptional work in Sonova Cleveland. Kim Reddish and her team have developed a wonderful, very intentional model around nurse externs, created a culture, and have really seen a lot of retention and recruitment benefits with that program. And so she'll be sharing that program, as well as Joe will be sharing from Blount Memorial. They have started an on-site CNA and LPN program with their local TCAT college. And so they will share that partnership, as well as some of the benefits that they have seen from those programs. Again, very excited to bring this information to you and to provide the resources. If you have any questions, ideas, or thoughts on future topics, please let us know. We will be having additional webinars in June and July, and then may also feature some additional ones later this year. Lots of content and lots of great work to share, so we're really excited. So again, everyone has been muted as you've come into the call. If you have a question, please don't hesitate to go ahead and put it in the chat. We will be addressing all of our questions in the chat with our panelists and our content experts after the content has been delivered, and when we will also take questions at that time and have an ability for you all to dialogue and ask questions about their great work. So we will go ahead and get started. And I will be driving this train today. So we'll go ahead and get started with Dr. Deborah Lee and Dr. Kathy Cooper. Very excited for them to share their work on certified nursing assistants and the research that they've done with that role. So please go ahead and introduce yourselves, and we'll dive right in.
Well, thank you so much, Farrell. Debbie and I are absolutely delighted to be able to share with you our project that we've worked on the last couple of years. I'm going to start the presentation, and then Debbie will jump in the middle, and then we'll both be back at the end, and delighted to answer any questions that you might have. So the idea for this project came out of some conversations and work that was already being done by Debbie and several long-term care leaders in the state of Tennessee related to establishing a nurse residency program. So part of that conversation was in acknowledging that the essential role that CNAs have in long-term care settings, as well as other settings, what could we learn from them to better inform our understanding about the challenges of recruitment, retention, and training of CNAs. So next slide. We were fortunate to receive some funding from Middle Tennessee State University to help us with our project. And we identified 3 goals or 3 aims that we had hoped to achieve. And the first one was we wanted to identify exactly what those direct and indirect needs of the CNAs that are working in long-term care facilities have that enable them to perform their role as a CNA. We also wanted to take a look at what factors might influence their capability or capacity, or ability to perform their role. And then lastly, what would be some things that might enhance CNA training and their ability to achieve certification in Tennessee that would help improve recruitment to and also retention in that CNA role. Next slide. So our project or our study actually had 2 phases. So in phase 1, which happened during January through November of 2022, we enlisted the assistance of the Tennessee Healthcare Association, National Healthcare Corporation, and also American Health Communities to figure out where to start, essentially. And phase 1 was 2 focus groups that we did. One focus group was what we called our key informants, and those were 10 directors or leaders in long-term care facilities. So that was our key informant. And we also did interviews with 18 CNAs that were selected, essentially kind of snowball sampling. We used our key informants to say, do you have any CNAs in your facility that might be willing to talk with us and answer and participate in these focus groups to help us answer the questions that we were interested in? So what we learned then from the responses from our key informants and for the CNA focus groups helped inform development of a 17-item online survey that was used in a phase 2. So our phase 1 was primarily qualitative data from the interviews that we conducted, and then phase 2 was more quantitative. So next slide. Phase 2 happened January of last year through June of last year. Again, we went back to THCA and they helped us identify long-term care facilities, the administrators that we needed to contact. And so we reached out then to those administrators. The online survey itself was could be accessed through a QR code. But could also be completed on a computer or a laptop. So the challenge was to get the survey into the hands of the CNAs or to the CNAs for them to complete. We offered a cash incentive, if you will, of an Amazon gift card to hopefully increase participation, and that we think that was successful. We also mailed hard copies of the recruitment flyer to each facility and then encouraged them to post those in areas where the CNAs in their facility frequented so that they could be informed about the study. Next slide. So just a little bit about the demographics. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because the best part of the presentation is actually what we found. But our key informant demographic data, we did have and we had 10 that we talked with. As you can see, 5 were female, 5 were males. 3 were directors of nursing, 3 were long-term care administrators, and 1 was a CNA instructor. We tried to, or we did a pretty good job of having representation across the state of Tennessee, with 5 of those key informants being from Middle Tennessee, 3 from East, and 2 from West Tennessee. Our CNA focus group participants were all females. You can see the demographics there in terms of ethnicity, years of experience, years of facility. Those were some of the demographics that we collected. We did have a bit of overrepresentation for Middle Tennessee with these CNAs and fewer participants from East or West. Okay. Next slide. So for our online survey, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, we had, it was okay. We would have liked to have had more. We ended up having 72 CNAs that participated or completed the online survey and submitted it. In addition to that, the representation across the geographic area was fairly heavily with Middle, but we did have a pretty good representation from East Tennessee, and that's kind of down towards the bottom of this slide. The questions that are highlighted in yellow, age, time as a CNA, and time at facility, those were variables that we pulled out to do some statistical analysis on. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But again, this is just an illustration of the type of demographics or the individuals who did take the online survey and then submit that. So next slide. So from the phase 1 data, these were some of the themes that emerged. And the themes were primarily organized around 3 categories. So we were interested in recruitment, retention, and education. I'm not going to read these to you, but I will pull out just some selected examples that kind of illustrate that. If you look at the key informants, some things related to recruitment were consistent staffing, manageable workload. And again, this was from the perspective of the long-term care administrators about what they thought would be helpful with recruitment of CNAs to their facility. Another one would be a desire, I already mentioned that one, never mind. Recruitment, lack of knowledge about what a CNA does. That was very interesting, something that we heard both from our CNAs as well as the key informants. As it relates to retention, if you hop over to the CNA side, what's going to keep CNAs in that role? Once you hire them and you have them in your facility, what keeps them there? And one of the things the CNAs told us was that they desire opportunities to advance other roles, such as a med tech, a peer leader, a preceptor. So that was just an example or representation of some of the elements that we found related to the focus group analysis of that qualitative data. So all of this information then guided development of the online survey questions. And Debbie is going to describe a little bit about those findings, which we're very excited about. So.
Oh, next. So let's dive into what we found out from our statewide survey. And so I'm going to go through a few pie charts here. And this was our sort of the first question around recruitment. And so how do folks find these jobs? How are they getting in your door? And most common, which was interesting enough, was they knew someone who worked there. So it's not so much of social media or maybe some of the other ways, but that was a predominant way for the people we talked to. But again, people are looking online for jobs. CNA training is another way. So there's a multitude of ways, but you'll see the social media was the smallest. And I want to go back to looking at the demographic data because the bottom line is the average age of our subjects was 35, over 35 years of age. So that makes a little bit of sense when you think about it in terms of you don't see a big social media component in this, but certainly it is one I think with younger CNAs that you're seeing. Next, please. So the slides that follow this and the other ones, individuals could select more than one option. That's why you see different numbers in these slides versus the first one you just saw, which is selecting one. So they could select more than one. So this question was again about recruitment. So when you're looking for a job, when you're looking for a CNA job, what's important? And of course, I don't think anybody's surprised by pay being by far the most important thing. But scheduling and flexibility with scheduling is a big component here too. So people want a schedule that works around their life, and I don't think anybody is surprised by that. And then the next pieces you see are really have to do with benefits, and that makes sense. Again, when you have a cohort that's over 35 years of age, and as of course you get older, those benefits become more important to you, as we know. Next. So then this is now, you have the CNA, certified nursing assistant. How do you keep them? And you would think, well, how much I'm getting paid is probably what keeps me there. But interestingly, it's the relationship they have with the residents. And when you think about that most of them had worked as a CNA for more than 11 years, that's why. It's because of the relationship they have with residents and their coworkers. So again, it's the value of the relationships that people have that really helps keep them there, and working as a team, and the scheduling. So again, you're getting more into sort of work-life balance in those other ones that come after that, and benefits again show up a little bit in the numbers as they get a little bit smaller. Next. So what benefits are important to you? Well, again, we see this because of the age thing, but interestingly enough, you know, many organizations, and yours may be one too, that offers a tuition reimbursement, was not as impactful as we thought. And again, it's often because the CNAs in our work were people who've been doing this work for a long time. We did hear from several CNAs who started out with the intention of becoming registered nurses or LPNs, and found that they had to work full-time in order to pay their bills, and working full-time and trying to go to school became too onerous. And so they ended up dropping out of school, but many come with that intention and then just find it's too challenging. So tuition reimbursement wasn't as important as insurance benefits to this cohort that we worked with. Next. And so this was an interesting part to us. So what advancement offers, like what are the ways, what's the career ladder for you? And there really, for most of the sample, was not one. And one of the respondents said to us, you know, once you're in that role, you're kind of stuck in that role unless, you know, you go on and you're in school and you become a nurse. So some can become mentors, some peer leaders, a med tech, which some facilities use and others don't, was another thing that was interesting to folks in terms of opportunities that they could look at. But yeah, this lack of opportunity is one of the concerns about retaining people in these roles if they don't see that they have any way to grow. So we need a career ladder for people who want to be CNAs and they want to continue to be CNAs. We don't have that in many places right now. Next. So satisfaction, job satisfaction and likelihood to stay, well, pay again is very important here, right? And we know that especially when COVID, which really, as you know, really hit this workforce very hard, agency staff got to be a big players in this. And I'm sure if you're in a hospital setting, many of you had the same challenge, that you have agency staff coming in making higher pay through the agency, and that was a difficult morale piece for the CNAs to see that happening. But feeling respected for the knowledge that I have is super important here. I'm going to read you a quote in a little bit from some very, as a nurse, very disconcerting things that we heard about how very knowledgeable CNAs who've been doing this work for a long time did not feel valued by mainly the nursing staff. And having less people to take care of, well, we all would like to see that. I think all of us would like to have better ratios of patients to our staff. But those were the biggies, really. Fewer people to take care of, feeling respected, and of course, higher pay. And the staffing is, as you know, is an ongoing issue. Next. So training was the third component. So we talked about retention, and we talked about recruitment, retention, and now we asked them about training. So like most jobs in healthcare, being a certified nursing assistant is stressful, but ways to manage their stress was the most common response that we got about what would be helpful to them. And, you know, challenging patients is another one, and oftentimes that has to do with family members as well, is how do you deal with difficult situations? And then oftentimes they're caring for people whose in long-term care and cognitive abilities are declining, and there may not be a memory care unit in the facility where they're working, and so it's not feeling like they have a sufficient amount. Now they get training in, you know, in how to manage issues around cognitive decline, but they felt like they needed more. So they may have gone to their CNA training program many, many years ago. But this is something, and as we learn more about cognitive decline, that we could really be, I think, providing more training in this area. And then they become very close, and many of them said we are their family of the patients they're caring for. So that, you know, that someone they've cared for a long time or become close to dies, and really just having to pick up and continue to work like, you know, we often have to do in any setting when we have patients that die. But if you've been caring for someone, which is what is unique about long-term care, they're often caring for people for very long periods of time, and you can understand how that would be difficult for them and how to do that. And then, you know, culture comes into play here, how to do that. How to care for people in a culturally appropriate way also is something that they'd like to know more about. So next. So based on what we heard from our focus group and what we saw in the survey results, these were some of the things that we suggested. And we did give this presentation to the Tennessee, in more detail, to the Tennessee Healthcare Association, who really helped us with recruitment. These are some of the things that we suggested. So, you know, the referral incentive is when you look at how people are coming into the facility, and oftentimes it is because the people working there are having good experiences and they have friends who might be looking, or relatives even. They're really giving an incentive for referring someone might be something that could do. And we often heard, and sadly heard the story of, you would hire someone and either they wouldn't show up for orientation, or maybe they left during the lunch break, or maybe they went through orientation and then you never saw them again. So that's a lot of investment, you know, when you bring somebody on. And so maybe a shadowing experience before they're hired in some way, so they can get a better idea of what certified nursing assistants do, because often they are not aware of the physicality of it, and maybe the emotional component of it too. Flexible scheduling means, you know, I can arrange my schedule. People like that. It's hard to do as a manager if you've ever had to do it. And same scheduling. There are some people that want to know what they're like. I'm going to work Monday through Friday, you know, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and that's my schedule all the time, because people can work their life around, well, that was 12 hours for 5 days a week. That wouldn't be a good schedule, but you get the idea. People then have some idea of what to expect with their scheduling is something people like. And then if you don't have a connection, if you don't have a CNA training program as part of your organization, connecting with maybe a high school CNA program or another organization that might offer CNA training, that's a nice pipeline also to get CNAs into your facility. Next. So advancement. So this is where I talk about, you know, what are ways that we can give a career ladder of some sort to individuals, because we had one CNA said, I also feel as if there's no way to work up towards anything. Once you're hired as a CNA, that's just it. So what can we do around that? You know, giving people opportunity, mentors, or peer leaders, and giving them those titles, and maybe giving them extra, and giving them extra, not maybe, giving them extra pay for being a mentor or being a peer leader within the CNA staffing is another way to recognize people's expertise and years of organization. And then cultural checks is just, you know, how do we do things here, and how are we checking in to see how people are doing, and just saying, you know, those are things that don't really cost any money. So, you know, how do we reward people and recognize and celebrate people when they do good things? Not that we shouldn't always be doing those, but having more opportunities to recognize and acknowledge the work, and know and trust their expertise is huge, and I've already talked about that. So next slide. So training, you know, opportunities to debrief, especially after the death of someone they've been caring for. We don't do a lot of that. That helps a lot with stress. Providing, you know, options for stress management, coping skills. Maybe that's something, but also, you know, there's lots of organizations that have special rooms for staff to go to, maybe on days where they need to take a little break and sort of be away from those things. But I think, you know, there's more we can do to help let people know how to build those skills, those coping skills, and those stress management, self-management skills within themselves, and also how to de-escalate difficult behaviors. And so de-escalation training, I think we thought would be something that would be useful. Next. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and she's going to say, this is, to me, was the interesting part of things too.
Well, and I want to be respectful of our times. Farrell, I think we had 20 minutes, and I believe we are over our 20 minutes. Do you have time for me just to maybe spend another 1 to 2 minutes for these last 2 slides?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, please.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. So as with all studies, there's some limitations and things that you learn. What we were a bit disappointed in is that in our small sample size, which really limited our ability to perform any kind of statistical analysis to say, you know, based on those things I had highlighted earlier, age, does it make a difference how old I am as a CNA as to whether I, you know, the type of things for recruitment, retention, or training that might be different between those age groups. So that was a challenge. We also know that not every participant answered all questions. So we, you know, that was, you know, that further made it a little difficult in terms of any kind of statistical analyses. And obviously, we only recruited from CNAs who work in long-term care facilities. So because they work in many other settings, certainly what we've shared with you today may not be generalizable to the CNA workforce in general. Next slide. So here's our lessons learned. When Debbie and I began this project, we were not aware that CNAs do not have work email addresses, because that was going to be one of the primary ways we were going to reach out and ask for participation. So we had no direct way to contact prospective participants, and we had to, you know, we spoke with our long-term care consultants, we talked to several state organizations, and we said, is there any way we can get it directly to them? And the answer was no, you'll have to do it indirectly through the long-term care administrators. We realized that that was a big ask for them, but we were so grateful to those that did support our project and then did disseminate that information regarding the how to access the survey to their CNAs in their facility. We also learned that we needed to do a better job communicating with that long-term care leadership about the study's purpose. What we thought was clear was not clear to some of them, and you know, they were a little curious about why we were asking CNAs certain questions, and you know, they wanted to know what we were going to ask, and we certainly shared the survey with them, that we were not trying to keep it secretive, but and they wanted to know how the data was going to be collected and how it was going to be used, which is absolutely reasonable, reasonable questions to ask. And while some of the CNAs that were provided they were provided an informed consent in their participation to participate in the study, some of them may have been hesitant to participate related to concerns that somehow their answers may have gotten back or shared within their facility or with their administrator. So next slide, which is our closing slide. I thank you. So thank you for listening to our presentation. We look forward to the next presentation and then answering any questions that you may have for Debbie and I at the end.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Dr. Lee and Dr. Cooper. It was really fascinating and just reinforces things that, to me, we understand about nurses and about many roles in the healthcare environment, but it's so interesting to have that direct data related to, CNAs in our state and how we can help make their roles better and definitely recruit into that role. So thank you again, and thank you for all your hard work. We will, again, wait for any questions at the end of our next presentation, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Crystal Jackson and her team there at Vanderbilt Health, and talking about our Vanderbilt Care Partner Academy at Vanderbilt in Nashville. So, Crystal, I'll hand it over to you.
Crystal, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. I'm Crystal Jackson. I'm the Senior Director of Nursing Education and Professional Development at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Today, I'm pleased to present to you part of my team. We're going to talk about the Vanderbilt Care Partner Academy. This program launched in 2022, and we are excited to present to you information about it. First up is going to be Carmen Malden. Carmen is the Central Team Director, and next up will be Kelly Ernst, and then lastly will be Rebecca Bone, and then I will wrap it all up. Next slide. So today, our outcomes, we will talk about the gaps in unlicensed assistive personnel at our large academic medical center and our findings and how we came up with our program. We will also talk to you about our development and design of the program and how our conception of the program has worked for us. Also, some considerations that we have implemented along the way. We're going to share some qualitative data and some quantitative data with you, and also some challenges that we have faced and some upcoming work. So I'm going to turn it over to Carmen.
Thank you, Crystal. Next slide. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carmen Malden. I'm the Director of Clinical Education and Professional Development for our central team. As Crystal mentioned, in June of 2022, our organization had 151 open care partner positions posted. We knew at that time that there were many barriers to hiring unlicensed assistive personnel. Specifically, the job code for a care partner or a patient care technician at VUMC requires nurses aid training or equivalent experience. Local nurses aid training courses host a 4-week day program, which includes 3 weeks of classroom and 1 week of clinical, or a 5-week evening program that includes 4 weeks of training and 1 week of clinical. Each of these may be prohibitive to working full time. For example, the weekday program classroom hours are 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And even though the evening program is 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., the clinical hours for both programs are from 7 to 3. Additionally, the cost of these programs may be up to $1,000 to attend, and that can be a barrier for certain applicants. Next slide. To address these barriers, we conceptualized an earn while you learn approach, which ultimately became the Vanderbilt Care Partner Academy. This approach, of course, offered benefits to the applicant by eliminating tuition costs. This allowed the candidates to work full-time for our organization while obtaining the necessary skills also. But this approach offered benefits to the organization as well. By creating a process for which we could provide the necessary knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform in the care partner role, we were able to reduce the minimum qualifications to include candidates 18 years or older with a high school diploma or GED and an ability to pass a background check. We were also able to customize traditional nurses' aid content to our unique needs, such as incorporating EMR training, for example, which offered efficient onboarding compared to community programs. After a screening interview with talent acquisition, candidates are interviewed by department managers and hired directly into the departments. Since the centralized program knows where these candidates will be going, we can tailor our training to fit the department needs. For example, our trainees matriculating into Monroe Carroll move into entity and department-specific orientation sooner than our other trainees due to the difference in scope of practice in the pediatric patient populations. To create this program required upfront investment from the organization. Our original proposal included 1.5 education specialist FTEs, as well as dedicated training space that allowed for both classroom and skills space. However, with this investment, we projected that we could increase our onboarding volumes for this role by 30% month over month and achieve a positive ROI at 12 trainees per month. Next slide. The first metric of success we monitor for the Care Partner Academy is orientation length. Average orientation length for a traditional experienced hire in acute care is 4 weeks for our organization. Completing centralized training program in 3 weeks aims to keep our non-productive hours on par with traditional orientation. Most of our trainees complete departmental orientation in as little as 1 to 2 weeks following the centralized program. We knew at the outset of the program that the participants themselves were one of our key stakeholders, so we implemented a participant survey to be completed at the end of the program at 90 days, 6 months, and 1 year. One of the survey items in particular examines the participants' satisfaction with the program. Another key stakeholder group in the success of the Academy is the departmental leaders. We wanted to ensure that participating leaders were at least as satisfied or more satisfied with the performance of trainees compared to hiring those with experience. We send leader surveys biannually to track their perception of the quality of trainees coming through their departments. Lastly, we recognize that the unlicensed assistive personnel roles are historically roles that experience high turnover. We posited that the additional support that these trainees receive through our program could contribute to improved retention in the role. So we set goals to monitor the retention of these trainees against each entity's baseline. Next slide.
Okay. I'm Dr. Bone. I'm one of the program leads for the Care Partner Academy. I played a large role in developing this program, and in doing so, I followed the same framework as most of the brick and mortar CNA and nursing programs here in the community. So basically, this program, it begins with didactic, and then it progresses to skill building, and then it culminates with the clinical experience where trainees can apply what they've learned in class. I used a backward design method to craft our student learning outcomes. And for the curriculum, I used a document that was created by our own Care Partner Council that is called the Standard of Work document to outline our content. The standard of work, it's comparable to a job description. It identifies those knowledge and skills that care partners across the organization need to possess in order to provide safe, quality patient care. The skills that our trainees are taught are those basic fundamental nursing skills. I did use Mosby's textbook for nursing assistants, the textbook that is authored by Sorrentino and Remmert. I believe it was the 10th edition. I did use that as our primary source for content material. As I said, our program follows the traditional nursing school model. The first 2 weeks are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and we do meet in person. There is nothing online. But those first 2 weeks we focus on knowledge and skill building. Before our trainees can progress to the clinical component, our trainees must demonstrate competency in skill performance, and our trainees are given a brief multiple choice assessment with those test items written at the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Our clinical days are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the 3rd week. And we begin our shift at 6:30 in the morning so that our trainees can participate in handoff. We usually end our clinical day around 3 in the afternoon. Most of your typical nursing programs have a instructor to student ratio of 1:6 or 1:8. But because we know our trainees have very little to no healthcare experience or background, we do keep our instructor to student ratio at 1:4. We're currently piloting a tiered skills acquisition model, and that is where each day of clinical has a specific focus. We are exploring some opportunities where we may be able to provide our trainees with some additional practice with phlebotomy. The units that we selected for our clinical training are those units that provide trainees with the opportunity to practice those higher level skills. And our clinical facilitators do choose patients that require total care and challenge our trainees to use all the knowledge and skills that they learned while they were in class with us. Lastly, 3 keys to program success is definitely a good program manual, facilitator guides, and adequate classroom space for skill labs and adequate equipment. Next slide.
Thank you, Rebecca, for giving us that nice overview of the content. My name is Kelly Ernst, and I am the other program lead for our academy. And so reflecting back on the outcomes that both Rebecca and Carmen mentioned, we just wanted to share a little bit of our data with you. And you can see there in the almost 2 years that our program has been in existence, we have onboarded a total of 391 candidates. And 92% of those candidates completed both the classroom as well as the clinical portion of the course. After that, they go on to their unit-based orientation, which lasts typically 1 to 2 weeks once they complete the program. And we'll advance to the next slide, please, Farrell. And so now we wanted to focus a little bit on our key stakeholders and the information that we gleaned from them. And first off, we survey our leaders, which includes both the managers as well as the unit-based educators for those areas that we serve and our customers go to. And so when we look at the leader satisfaction, as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to see that they were at least as satisfied, if not more so, with our candidates coming from VCPA as they were from care partners coming from traditional programs and funnels of entry into the institution. And so you can see there that 69.5% of those leaders were as satisfied, if not more so, with the outcomes of our participants. And then we want to turn a little bit to our participant surveys and a couple of key questions that we asked them. And one of them is, would you be willing to recommend this program to a friend or a family member? And you can see there that nearly 100% of them were. And I might add in a note here is we really encourage them to give us good, valuable, honest feedback when they're completing the surveys. And not to sugarcoat that, because we really need that information to make this program better all the time. We also ask them about their role confidence. And again, this is at the end of the program and at the end of their clinical experience. And how confident or were you confident in completing the role of a care partner? And you can see nearly 92% felt that they were confident in executing that role. And then finally, as one of our kind of overall program goals, we really want to retain these people, not just in this care partner role, but as noted by our colleagues who gave the first presentation, we want them to feel like this is a stepping stone in their career. So we asked them, are you interested in attending nursing school, and or are you already applying into a nursing school. And you can see there that 83% of them were. And so we feel like this is really a good succession plan for our nursing departments. So next slide, please, before I turn it over to Crystal to wrap us up.
So some challenges and lessons learned. Can you hear me okay?
A little muffled.
All right, what about now?
Better.
All right, perfect. Challenges and lessons learned from our Vanderbilt Care Partner Academy. So initially we started out with a different interview model, and now we have them interviewing directly with their hiring manager. Also, we offer experiences for pre-hire so that those candidates can understand what it's like to be in healthcare, so they can get that experience firsthand, so they get to see how to what the clinical world really does look like. We created a trainee accountability responsibility with our department leaders. Remember, these individuals, this is their first time working in healthcare, so they did not have a glimpse prior to this of the start and stop times of shifts and different responsibilities that they would have. So what we did was partner with the department leaders to create that accountability tool. We know that phlebotomy is a great experience for them, so we are still partnering to create that as an opportunity for them to get this scheduled while they are doing their orientation. Additionally, we recognize that the low ratio of facilitation, the 1-to-4, is so imperative during their clinical rotations. So we try to continue to keep that consistent with our consistent facilitators. Also scaling to 2 cohorts per month and creating consistent staffing models with lots of flexibility in our department is key, and that was a priority for us. And then along the way, we are still being very creative in how we retain these individuals along the way for long-term retention. We are working with our partners in each entity to kind of design long-term retention plans for care partners. Next slide. So in summary, if you are considering creating a model as we did, some things to consider are factors that contribute to unlicensed assistive personnel. As far as recruitment and retention, we know that there's lots of barriers there of why those individuals leave. We are still tackling those, and we are still trying to stand those up as well. Internal training programs could help meet your institutional needs, and that's why we really look to this one. And it's been successful for us so far, and we're very pleased with the outcomes. We have key stakeholders, human resources, our department leaders, talent and acquisitions, our CNOs, who are participants in our program. We have lots of conversations about it, and it is very successful. And then also consider shared outcomes, consistent facilitators, creating some accountability plans, and also creating some clear processes that will make your program more successful. Next slide. Thank you for allowing us to present to you today. Here is our email information. Thanks, Farrell.
Thank you all so much. Wonderful program, and I am just really excited to see it. I remember when we had several conversations about this program, so I'm so glad that it has been such a benefit. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. I want to open it up to our audience and see if anyone has any questions for our group. If you do, please raise your hand and I can unmute you if you do have questions. Let's see. Okay, it looks like we might have a so Andrew has a, I'm so sorry, you guys, I'm trying to stop sharing my screen here. Can you all see me?
Yeah, we
don't
don't
see
see the slides anymore. You're okay,
Yeah.
Carol.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's always different types of applications here. Okay, Dr. Lee, Andrew put in the chat, he said, it's interesting that you cited benefits and health insurance as a large indicator for employment. Are new CNAs in a gap between TennCare eligibility and affordability of employer-sponsored insurance? Question mark.
What a good question. I don't know if Kathy has a thought about that. That's a really good question. I don't know, because, you know, the average age was what, 35.9 years, I think, and many of them had worked 11 years already. So, you know, when they were in their early 20s, I guess at that point, they probably were eligible at that point, probably for TennCare. And then as they get employment, right, you come off of TennCare because you have, you know, benefits. But that's a really great question, and I think it'd be, especially for younger CNAs, something our employers referring them, you know, to TennCare if they're not working full time and can't get insurance through their employer. So, great question, Andrew.
It might be one of those things that would be great for HR to present with a candidate, because I think younger people don't appreciate the value of that. And we see that in some of our candidates, especially the ones who are in their younger 20s, just how valuable that is as part of their employment and really part of their income.
Yep.
So putting
Absolutely.
that
I think
it says this is how much it costs, and you know, this is what value it is to you financially.
Absolutely. Okay, we have several questions. Let's see, from Tina Crum. Does your program, and I'm assuming this is for Crystal and the Vanderbilt team, but does your program meet the requirements for taking a certification exam?
Not at this time.
I'm seeing that. Not at this time. Okay.
Not at this time.
And I want to shout out to Tina Crum at Ballard Health, because she was one of the people that really helped us a lot understand CNA programs. So shout out to you, Tina.
Thank you. Yeah. And
I'll
if
chime in here
you
to
were
say,
to, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, really the barrier to us being able to offer the certification is that as of right now, our trainees would need to rotate in long-term care facilities to obtain that certification. And so for us, rotating in acute care, even though they're demonstrating many of the same skills, it really is a non-starter to be able to sit for that certification exam.
Absolutely, and that's being discussed at the federal level for that requirement for CNAs. But you know, you may look at the PCT certification as an option. That certification, although it wouldn't be transferable to long-term care, it would be a stackable credential certification that they could get. And there is no clinical requirement for that certification, but it is available, and obviously something that they could, you know, take with them. And so that's always a good option as well, but doesn't necessarily transfer to long-term care or where a CNA is required. Kathy Taylor. Hi, Dr. Taylor. What can you say about longer-term hiring and retention after completion of the CNA program?
Kathy, you want to take it?
Maybe I misunderstood the question. Were you thinking about the Vanderbilt program, those individuals that have completed that?
Oh, yeah, maybe that was a question for them.
As you were reading it, Farrell, that was the way.
Okay.
You really didn't have a program.
I'll reread it.
Okay.
Yeah, let me, Dr. Taylor, let me see if I can unmute you if you want to clarify. Kathy Taylor, you're unmuted if you'd like to rephrase your question.
So yes, it was about the Vanderbilt CNA training program. Thank you.
Carmen, do you?
So that question again was, oh, go ahead, yeah.
Sure. So I'm happy to take that question. I will say that our trainees is still a high turnover role. However, we've been really pleased because we've seen a 20% increase from our baseline 2 years ago where we started. So we know that this is an area that we still have work to do. And to Crystal's, I think it was your last slide, Crystal, we are actively working on where can we come in to supplement the work that this program does to work on retention. But we do see that the trainees that come through this program have shifted some of our long-term retention at 1 year and beyond.
Thank you, Carmen. Laura Franklin asked, do you have any data regarding your retention rate as after 1 year? So it sounds like you've addressed that there. And then for the Vanderbilt team, what do you feel has been one of the best topics you teach in your Care Partner program?
Oh,
Wow,
well,
that's a good question,
wow.
Rebecca.
Ooh,
Everything's great that we teach.
everything. Gee.
I think any, in particular things that have an activity associated with them.
Yes.
And we try to, this is how I describe it to the participants. Today, we're going to learn some stuff and then we're going to do some stuff. We're going to learn
Yes.
some stuff and do some stuff. And I think that is a key model for our adult learners, giving them some rationale behind why they're doing it this way, and then doing it that way. That doesn't give you a topic.
It's very interactive. Our program is very interactive. Our trainees are very engaged, and every bit of it is they're interested, they're engaged. I can't say really that one topic is more important than the other, because we really do hit on those key aspects of being a healthcare giver. We did start out with professionalism being a little bit of a weakness with this particular population because of their backgrounds. And so we addressed that professionalism piece early on, and we really we've come a long way with this program. Very proud of this program. But let me say is that it's taken everybody. It's everybody's input has made this program what it is today, and we are continuing to improve. We listen to our stakeholders, and we make things happen.
And
Thank you, Dr. Bone. I appreciate that.
To the point of the
Yep.
first presentation, also, we're working on a career ladder for
Yes.
care partners. And another thing is we have a care partner council that they can become engaged in. And I think it is very interesting with each cohort to see the camaraderie-ness, if that's the right word, that comes out of each of the cohorts, and how, sometimes they even keep in touch with each other despite the fact that they're, going to different units. But I think, you spend 2 weeks with a group of people and you start to develop those bonds. And so I think that plays to some of the things that you guys saw in your survey, why they stayed in a role or what they want to see in that role. So hopefully we're moving in the right direction with those things.
Part of that too is that we also had some that were already in nursing school, that was already enrolled in nursing school. And so that's always a win when, you have those individuals who already were enrolled in nursing school and excited about the profession in itself. So I didn't want to miss saying that as well.
Yeah, and
Well, that's a great segue. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Bone. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And that is one of the really huge wins about our program, is that it does give people an opportunity to dip their toes in the water to see, is healthcare for them. And so, we've had, and I do want to give a big shout out. It's a win-win. In 2023, our Care Partner of the Year happened to be a Care Partner Academy alumni. So we're very proud of our program.
Thank you. One last question that I have from Jem Hughes. Were all of your participants external hires, or do you draw from other roles within the organization?
Good question. Most of them are external candidates, but we do have some people. We've had a couple of dietary folks, a couple of EVS folks, medical receptionists who want that care partner piece. I think that's about in general. Yeah. But most are external.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that's all of our questions. There was an additional question about certification. I addressed that. So the Vanderbilt program does not set them up for the CNA certification at this time. So, and yeah, that looks like it. So wonderful. Thank you. And as a reminder, we will be sending out materials and the recording for the webinar today. Thank you so much to our presenters. Thank you for all of your hard work in this space. It's very near and dear to my heart. And I look forward to hearing more about the future and how you've impacted healthcare and the roles in which are so important to the service that we provide. So again, we will send out the recording and materials. And if you have any questions, we'll also provide the contact information for our presenters. I'm sure they'll be happy to dialogue if anyone has any additional questions. Thank you again so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes.
Absolutely.